A spilled glass of wine could have ruined his life, but the billionaire's unexpected. Kindness turned a single dad's worst moment into the chance of a lifetime. Ethan woke up before sunrise, the sound of his alarm cutting through the small apartment like a knife. For a moment, he just lay there, staring at the cracked ceiling, feeling the weight of another long day ahead. His body ached from yesterday's double shift, but he didn't have the luxury to rest. Rent was due in a few days, and his daughter Lily's school trip still needed to be paid for. He couldn't let her down, not again. He got up quietly, careful not to wake Lily, and tiptoed to the kitchen. The old kettle whistled as he made instant coffee. He sipped it slowly, letting the warmth fight off the cold morning air that slipped through the thin windows. The apartment was small and worn out, but it was home. A few drawings Lily had made were taped to the refrigerator, smiling stick figures labeled "Me and Daddy." Those little drawings reminded him why he kept going. When Lily's alarm rang, she came out rubbing her eyes, her hair messy and her pink pajamas twisted from sleep. Ethan smiled softly. "Morning, kiddo," he said. She grinned back and hugged him. They had their morning routine. He made toast while she told him about her school friends and what she wanted to be when she grew up. "A teacher," she said proudly, "because teachers make people smart." Ethan laughed. "That's a good reason," he said, ruffling her hair. He helped her get ready, tying her shoelaces carefully. Before she left for school, she kissed him on the cheek and said, "Don't work too hard, Daddy." He smiled, but inside he felt that familiar ache. He worked all the time to much and still. It never felt like enough. After she left, he changed into his uniform, a white shirt, black vest, and tie. The shirt was a little tight from years of washing, and his shoes had lost their shine, but he made sure everything looked neat. Working at La Belle Maison, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, meant appearances mattered. The customers were rich, demanding, and often rude. Ethan had learned to smile through insults, nod through complaints, and apologize for things that weren't his fault. When he arrived, the restaurant was already busy with staff preparing for the night. The chandeliers sparkled above the marble floor, and the smell of expensive perfume and roasted garlic filled the air. Mr. Collins, the restaurant manager, was already barking orders. "Ethan, you're late by 2 minutes," he snapped, though Ethan had arrived on time. Ethan apologized quietly. Collins never liked him, perhaps because Ethan didn't play along with the fake charm others used to impress him. During lunch, Ethan moved quickly between tables, balancing trays and keeping his smile steady. Some customers barely looked at him when they ordered. Others treated him like he was invisible, but he had grown used to that. His thoughts often drifted to Lily. If she was doing well in school, she'd eaten her lunch. By late afternoon, everyone was talking about one thing: the dinner reservation for the night. "Victoria Hale," one waiter whispered, eyes wide. "The CEO of Hale International? She's worth billions," another added. "She owns half the buildings downtown." Even Collins looked nervous, which was rare. He gathered the staff and warned them, "No mistakes tonight. This woman could make or break our reputation. Ethan, you're serving her table. Don't mess up." Ethan felt a knot in his stomach. He wasn't the most senior waiter. He didn't know why Collins chose him. Maybe it was a setup. Maybe Collins was waiting for him to fail, so he'd have an excuse to fire him. Ethan just nodded and promised himself he'd do everything perfectly. As evening approached, the restaurant transformed. The lights dimmed, soft jazz played in the background, and candles flickered on every table. The air felt heavy with tension. Ethan checked every detail: folded napkins, polished glasses, spotless silverware. He even practiced his greeting quietly under his breath. When Victoria Hale finally arrived, the room seemed to shift. She walked in wearing a simple black dress that somehow looked more elegant than anything Ethan had ever seen. Her hair was tied back neatly, and she carried herself with calm confidence. The host greeted her, and soon she was seated with 2 associates. Both in expensive suits, Ethan approached carefully, keeping his nerves in check. "Good evening," he said with a polite smile. "Welcome to La Belle Maison. May I offer you something to drink?" His voice was steady, though his hands trembled slightly behind his tray. Victoria looked up at him briefly. Her gaze was sharp, but not unkind. "Red wine, please," she said. Her tone was soft, but there was authority in it. Ethan nodded and hurried to fetch the bottle of rare vintage that cost more than his monthly rent. He reminded himself to move slowly, to keep his focus. He returned, holding the bottle carefully. He presented it to her, and she gave a small nod of approval. He began to pour, concentrating so hard that he didn't notice the waiter behind him until it was too late. The other waiter brushed past him suddenly, bumping his elbow. The glass tilted, and a stream of dark red wine splashed across Victoria's dress. The sound of the spill seemed louder than it should have been. Conversation stopped. The jazz faded into the background. Ethan froze, staring at the spreading stain. "Oh my God, ma'am, I'm so sorry," he stammered, grabbing napkins in a panic. His face turned red. His hands shook. "It was an accident, I didn't mean." Before he could finish, Mr. Collins appeared beside him, face red with fury. "What did I tell you, Ethan? You've ruined everything," he hissed. He reached for the wine bottle like he might throw it away, but Victoria raised her hand calmly. "It's fine," she said firmly. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the silent room. Everyone stopped moving. Ethan froze mid-apology. Collins blinked, confused. Victoria looked down at her dress and back at Ethan. "It's just wine," she said, almost smiling. "Accidents happen." She dabbed at the stain herself with a napkin, completely composed. Ethan didn't know what to say. Nobody did. The tension in the room broke slightly as her associates relaxed. She even laughed lightly, saying, "Well, now I have a reason to buy a new dress." Some guests smiled awkwardly, but most looked amazed. No one expected a billionaire to react with such grace. Ethan kept apologizing, but she stopped him gently. "You've said sorry enough," she said kindly. "Go get yourself a glass of water. You look like you've seen a ghost." Even Mr. Collins seemed lost for words. He forced a nervous smile and muttered something about getting her a replacement tablecloth. Ethan, still pale, excused himself for a moment, washing his shaking hands in the back room. He couldn't believe what had just happened. The rest of the evening went surprisingly smoothly. Victoria continued her meal as if nothing had happened, complimenting the food and even thanking Ethan when he brought dessert. She didn't treat him with pity or anger, just simple respect, something he wasn't used to. When she was leaving, she turned back to him and said, "Thank you for your service tonight." Ethan. She remembered his name, which shocked him. Most customers never did. Then she added with a faint smile, "I hope to see you again." As she walked out, Ethan stood frozen for a moment, unsure if he had just been spared or if something bigger had just begun. Collins muttered that Ethan was lucky, but deep down, Ethan sensed this night would stay with him forever. He walked home under the quiet city lights, the cool air brushing against his tired face. Despite everything, he smiled faintly. He had survived the night, and maybe, just maybe, something good would come from it. The next morning, Ethan woke up with a strange mix of relief and embarrassment. He couldn't stop thinking about what had happened the night before. The image of red wine spilling across Victoria Hale's black dress replayed in his mind over and over again. He had expected shouting, anger, maybe even the loss of his job, but instead, she had smiled. She had laughed it off like it was nothing. He still couldn't believe it. People like her didn't usually act that way at breakfast. Lily was sitting at the table, eating cereal and swinging her legs. "Daddy, you look funny," she said with a giggle. Ethan smiled weakly. "Do I?" he asked. "You look like you saw a ghost." He laughed softly and kissed her forehead. "Something like that," he said. He didn't want to tell her about the accident. She didn't need to know how close he'd come to losing everything. After dropping her at school, he went straight to the restaurant. The air inside felt different that morning. Some of his coworkers gave him odd looks, and whispers followed him through the kitchen. He could hear bits and pieces. "That's the guy who spilled on her. He's lucky she didn't fire everyone. I heard she didn't even complain." Mr. Collins called him into his office. Ethan braced himself, expecting the worst. Collins was sitting behind his desk, his expression unreadable. "You embarrassed this restaurant last night," he began sharply. But somehow, Mrs. Hale didn't make a complaint. In fact, she tipped generously and wrote a note praising your professionalism. Ethan blinked in surprise. She praised me. Collins sighed. Yes, don't ask me why. But you got lucky, Ethan. Don't ever push that luck again. Ethan nodded, murmuring, "Thank you, sir," even though he knew Collins didn't mean it kindly. He returned to the dining area with a mix of confusion and gratitude. Why had Victoria done that? Why would someone that powerful care about a waiter's mistake? Days passed, and the incident slowly became just another restaurant story, something everyone whispered about but soon forgot. Ethan tried to move on too. He focused on his work, saving every extra dollar, hoping to take Lily somewhere nice on her birthday. But deep down, the memory of Victoria's calm, kind eyes stayed with him. Then, one afternoon, as he was polishing glasses, Collins approached him with an unreadable expression. "There's a call for you," he said curtly. "In my office." "Don't take long," Ethan frowned, confused. "A call for me?" he asked. "Who would call me here?" Collins didn't answer, just waved him toward the phone. Ethan picked up the receiver. "Hello, this is Ethan speaking." A calm, familiar voice came through. "Mr. Ethan, this is Victoria Hale." Ethan froze. He almost dropped the phone. "Ms. Hale?" "Oh, hello, ma'am. I'm so sorry again about don't apologize," she said gently. "I'm calling for a different reason. I'd like to meet with you, if you're available tomorrow morning." Ethan's heart started racing. "Meet me?" he asked, unsure if he'd heard right. "Yes," she said. "I'd like to discuss something with you. Don't worry, you're not in trouble." She gave him the address of her office and ended the call. Ethan stood there for a full minute holding the phone, completely stunned. When he told Collins, the manager frowned suspiciously. "What could she possibly want with you?" he muttered. Ethan didn't know. That night he could hardly sleep. His mind spun with possibilities. Maybe she wanted to offer a settlement, or maybe she was just curious about him. Whatever it was, it didn't feel like bad news. Somehow, he felt a strange sense of hope. The next morning, he wore his cleanest clothes, an old button-up shirt and a faded gray jacket, and took the subway across the city. Victoria's office was in one of the tallest buildings downtown, with glass walls that shimmered in the sunlight. He felt small walking into the lobby. Everything was bright, polished, and expensive. The receptionist smiled politely when he gave his name. "Mrs. Hale is expecting you," she said. "Please, take the elevator to the 27th floor." Ethan's stomach flipped. As he stepped out of the elevator, he found himself in a quiet, modern hallway lined with artwork. A moment later, Victoria's assistant greeted him and led him into a large office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Victoria was there, sitting behind a sleek desk, typing on her laptop. She looked up and smiled warmly when she saw him. "Ethan," she said. "Thank you for coming." He felt completely out of place, but managed a polite nod. "Thank you for inviting me, ma'am. I still feel terrible about what happened that night." She waved her hand lightly. "Please, stop worrying about the wine. I've had worse things spilled on me," she said with a small laugh. "You handled it well. Most people in your position would have panicked or blamed someone else. You didn't." Ethan blushed slightly. "I just didn't want to lose my job," he admitted. "Maybe that's exactly why I wanted to see you," she said. She stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the skyline. "You remind me of someone I used to know, a man who worked harder than anyone but was always overlooked because of where he came from." She turned back to him. "I started a program recently. It's meant to help people like that, people who deserve better opportunities but don't have the connections or the luck to get them." Ethan blinked, unsure where she was going with this. "I'm not sure I understand," he said quietly. Victoria smiled again. "I'd like to offer you a position in one of my companies. Not as a waiter, something with real growth. You'd get training, a fair salary, and time to spend with your daughter. I read about you, Ethan. Mr. Collins said you're a single parent." Ethan's mouth went dry. You read about me?" "After that night I asked about you," she said honestly. "You impressed me not because of the spill, but because you didn't lose your composure. That says a lot about a person's character." He stared at her, completely speechless. Opportunities like this didn't happen to people like him. He wanted to believe it, but it sounded too good to be true. "Ma'am, I don't know what to say," he managed to whisper. "Say yes," she replied simply. "Take a chance on yourself. The world needs more people who work hard with heart." Ethan hesitated, his mind spinning. He thought about Lily and how happy she'd be if he could finally give her more than just enough. He thought about all the nights he'd come home exhausted, about the fear of bills piling up, about feeling stuck in a job that didn't see him as more than a number. Maybe this was the change he'd prayed for. Victoria watched him quietly, as if she could sense the storm of thoughts in his head. "You don't have to decide now," she said softly. "Think about it. I'll have my assistant send you the details." As he left the office, his legs felt shaky. The elevator ride down felt endless. He stepped outside into the bright sunlight and just stood there, trying to process what had happened. The city looked different, that day full of possibilities instead of obstacles. On the subway ride home, he looked out the window, lost in thought. Maybe fate really did work in strange ways. A spilled glass of wine, a mistake he had cursed himself for, had somehow led him here, to a chance at a new life. When he got home, Lily ran into his arms. "Daddy," she squealed. "You're home early." He laughed and hugged her tightly. "Yeah, kiddo," he said. "I might be home early more often soon." She looked up, puzzled. "Why?" Ethan smiled, his heart full for the first time in a long while. "Because, sweetheart," he said softly, "sometimes the worst moments can turn into the best beginnings." That night, after Lily fell asleep, Ethan sat by the window, staring at the city lights. He thought about Victoria's calm voice, her kindness, and the trust she had shown him without asking for anything in return. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of it. Something inside him whispered that his life was about to change forever, and this time, for the better. The next few days felt unreal for Ethan. He went to work, served tables, smiled at customers, and did everything as usual, but his mind was somewhere else. Every time he carried a tray or refilled a glass, he thought about Victoria Hale's offer. Could something like that really happen to him? It felt impossible. Maybe she had just said it to be kind. Maybe her assistant would never actually call. He tried not to get his hopes up, but hope had already found a way in. Then, one morning, his phone rang while he was walking Lily to school. It was an unfamiliar number. He hesitated before answering. A woman's voice spoke politely. "Good morning, Mr. Ethan. This is Laura, Mrs. Hale's assistant. She asked me to confirm if you've had time to think about her offer." Ethan's heart started racing. I have," he said, glancing down at Lily, who was skipping beside him, humming a song. "I'd really like to learn more." "It's wonderful," Laura replied. "Mrs. Hale would like you to come to her new project office tomorrow morning. She'll explain everything." Ethan could barely focus the rest of the day. That night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling, the glow of the streetlight flickering through the curtains. He thought about all the years he'd spent waiting tables, dreaming of a chance that never came. Maybe this was at the moment everything could change. The next morning, he dropped Lily off at school early and took the bus to the other side of the city. The building wasn't as tall or fancy as Victoria's main office. It was smaller, with a banner outside that read Future Path Initiative. He didn't know what that meant, but the name itself sounded hopeful. Inside, he was greeted by a few friendly faces. "You must be Mr. Ethan," a young man said with a smile. "Mrs. Hale's been expecting you. Please, come this way." Victoria was in a meeting room, dressed simply in a cream-colored blouse and dark slacks. She smiled when she saw him. "Ethan, I'm glad you came." He nodded, still a little nervous. "Thank you for inviting me again, ma'am. I really appreciate this." She gestured for him to sit. "I want to tell you more about the program," she said. "It's something I started recently. When I first began working, I had no connections. I was turned down for jobs because I didn't look or sound like what companies wanted. But someone took a chance on me once, and it changed my life. Now I want to do the same for others." Ethan listened quietly, touched by the honesty in her words. She wasn't just a rich businesswoman. There was something real about her, something human, she continued. Future Path helps people from working-class backgrounds learn new skills and move into better jobs. It's about giving them a fair chance. I think you'd be a perfect candidate. Ethan blinked. Me. But I don't have a college degree. I've only worked in restaurants. Victoria smiled gently. Skills can be taught. Character can't. You've already shown the kind of attitude we need under pressure, respectful, and hardworking. That's what matters. He felt his chest tighten. No one had ever said something like that to him before. Most people only saw a tired waiter trying to make ends meet. She handed him a folder. This is a management training program we're starting for one of my new hospitality projects. It's a small hotel we're renovating. You'd learn the basics of managing staff, handling guests, and operations. It's a paid position, and there's flexibility for you to spend time with your daughter. Ethan couldn't believe what he was hearing. He opened the folder and saw the printed details: training schedule, salary, and benefits. His hands trembled slightly as he read. It wasn't a fortune, but it was more than he'd ever earned. Mrs. Hale, he said softly, I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me, she replied. Just work hard and make the most of it. That will be enough. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. He finally smiled, a little uncertainly. I promise I will. Before leaving, Victoria told him something that stuck with him long after. Sometimes, she said, life gives us strange chances. Most people are too afraid to take them. Don't be one of them, Ethan. On his way home, Ethan felt like the whole city looked different. The buses, the traffic, the gray buildings, all of it seemed brighter somehow. He couldn't wait to tell Lily. When he picked her up from school, she ran into his arms. Daddy, why are you smiling so much? She asked with a laugh. He lifted her up and spun her around. Because something good happened, he said. Something really good. That evening, as they ate dinner together, he told her everything in simple words she could understand. Her eyes grew wide with excitement. So you're not going to be a waiter anymore? She asked. Not right away, he said, smiling. I'll be learning something new first. But it means I might be home earlier and maybe we can spend more time together. She clapped her hands. Yay! Then you can come to my school play. Ethan laughed. I wouldn't miss it for the world. The next week, he began the training program. The first few days were overwhelming. He was surrounded by people who spoke in business terms he barely understood. Words like operations, client relations, and budget management flew over his head. But he listened carefully, took notes, and stayed after hours to study. Victoria visited occasionally, checking in quietly. She never made him feel small. Instead, she asked how he was adjusting and even gave small bits of advice. Don't try to be perfect, she said once. Just be consistent. That's what makes people trust you. Ethan noticed something about her. She treated everyone the same way, from executives to janitors. She didn't act superior. That made him respect her even more. After a few weeks, he started to gain confidence. He learned how to handle bookings, speak with clients, and even train staff in hospitality standards. The more he learned, the more he realized how much he'd underestimated himself all these years at home. Lily noticed the change too. You look less tired, Daddy, she said one night as he tucked her in. And you smile more, he smiled softly. That's because things are finally getting better, he said. But not everyone was happy about Ethan's new start. One evening, as he stopped by the restaurant to pick up his last paycheck, Mr. Collins spotted him. Well, if it isn't my favorite clumsy waiter, Collins said mockingly. I heard Mrs. Hale gave you some fancy new job. Don't get too comfortable. People like us don't last long in places like that, Ethan could have argued, but instead, he just smiled. Maybe, he said quietly, but I'm still going to try. He left without another word. For the first time, Collins's insults didn't bother him. He had outgrown them. Back at his new workplace, Ethan began earning respect. His coworkers admired his patience and kindness. He always remembered their names, helped when someone was struggling, and treated everyone fairly. Little by little, he was becoming the kind of person others looked up to. One afternoon, Victoria called him into her office. I've been reviewing the reports, she said. You're doing very well, Ethan. The team seems to like you. He smiled shyly. I just try to do my best, ma'am, she nodded approvingly. That's exactly why you're succeeding. Keep it up. As he left her office, he couldn't help but think how strange life could be. Just a few months ago, he was terrified of losing his job because of a spilled glass of wine. Now, he was learning to manage people and build a future he had only dreamed of. That night, he and Lily sat on the small balcony of their apartment, watching the city lights. She leaned her head against his shoulder and whispered, "I'm proud of you, Daddy." His eyes stung with emotion, but he just smiled. "I'm proud of us, sweetheart," he said, "because we didn't give up." He didn't know what challenges still lay ahead, but one thing was certain: his life had changed forever. And it had all started with one small mistake that turned into a second chance. Ethan's first weeks in the program were exciting but also exhausting. Every morning, he woke up early, kissed Lily goodbye, and headed to the new workplace with a mixture of nervousness and determination. The office smelled different from the restaurant clean. Modern and quiet, with the faint scent of coffee and polished wood. For the first time in years, he felt like he belonged somewhere. The work itself was challenging. He had to learn how to manage staff, organize schedules, and communicate with clients. There were moments when he felt completely out of his depth. He remembered the nights he had spent alone, exhausted from juggling work and parenting, wondering if he would ever get a break. Now, someone had given him a real chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. Victoria visited the office from time to time. She never acted superior, but she had an unmistakable air of authority. Her calm and supportive demeanor made Ethan feel more confident. One afternoon, she pulled him aside. "You're doing very well," she said. "I can see that you're learning fast. Keep observing and asking questions. That's how people grow." Ethan nodded eagerly. He watched how she handled meetings, negotiations, and problem-solving. She was firm but fair, and she treated every employee with respect. It amazed him. Most bosses he had known either shouted or ignored their staff. But Victoria believed in guiding people. At home, things were changing too. Ethan now had more time with Lily. He helped her with homework, attended her school events, and even joined her on weekend trips to the park. Lily's eyes sparkled when she saw him at her school play for the first time. "I'm so glad you're here, Daddy," she whispered. Her happiness became Ethan's motivation. Every decision he made now wasn't just for himself, but for her. Despite the excitement, Ethan faced challenges. Some of the more experienced employees looked down on him. They whispered behind his back, suggesting that he only got the opportunity because Victoria felt sorry for him. One evening, Ethan overheard a coworker muttering, "He's just lucky. He'll never last here." The words stung, and for a moment, doubt crept in. He wondered if he was really cut out for this world. But Victoria's earlier words echoed in his mind, "Character matters more than anything else. Don't let anyone shake your confidence." He took a deep breath and reminded himself why he was here. Luck had nothing to do with it. Hard work and persistence had brought him this far. Ethan began taking small initiatives. He helped organize training sessions for junior staff, suggested ways to improve client services, and worked overtime to ensure projects were completed on time. Slowly, people started to notice. His quiet diligence and respectful attitude earned him respect from many of his colleagues. One particularly busy day, a problem arose with a high-profile client. Their reservations had been double-booked, and tempers flared. Ethan calmly stepped in, listening to both sides, and finding a solution that satisfied everyone. Victoria, who had been observing, later pulled him aside. "That was impressive," she said. "You handled pressure well." Many would have panicked. That moment gave Ethan a surge of confidence. For the first time, he felt capable of handling responsibilities far beyond anything he had imagined. He realized that he was growing not just professionally, but personally. He was learning patience, leadership, and self-assurance. As weeks turned into months, Ethan's role expanded. He started helping with budgets, planning events, and mentoring new staff. Each day brought new lessons, and each success, no matter how small, fueled his drive. At home, he shared these achievements with Lily, and she beamed with pride. "Daddy, you're amazing!" she would say. Those words warmed him more than any paycheck ever could. Despite the progress, he still faced moments of insecurity. During a team meeting, he hesitated while presenting a new plan, unsure if he could speak confidently in front of more experienced professionals. Victoria noticed and later gave him advice. "Confidence comes from preparation," she said gently. "If you prepare well, you'll speak with authority. And if you make a mistake, recover gracefully. That's what leaders do." Her guidance helped Ethan improve dramatically. He practiced presentations, learned to anticipate questions, and began speaking more confidently. His coworkers, who had once doubted him, started seeking his input on important decisions. Even those who had been critical began to recognize his dedication. One evening, Kane came home to find Lily waiting with a homemade card. "For you, Daddy," she said shyly. It was decorated with glitter and drawings of hearts. On the front, she had written, "World's Best Dad." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, sweetheart," he whispered, hugging her tightly. "You make everything worth it." Life, however, wasn't without stress. Balancing the new job and being a single parent required careful planning. He had to wake up early, stay late, and sometimes skip social events. But each sacrifice felt meaningful. For the first time, he wasn't just surviving, he was building a future. Victoria occasionally held meetings with Ethan to discuss progress and give feedback. She never sugar-coated her words, but she always offered guidance. "Remember, Ethan," she said once, "leaders don't just give orders. They inspire people. Show that you care, and people will follow you." Ethan took her words to heart. He made an effort to connect with every staff member, learning their names, listening to their concerns, and encouraging them. Slowly, the team began to function more smoothly, and morale improved. He realized that leadership wasn't about being in charge. It was about making people feel valued and respected. Then one day, Victoria asked him to present a report to the company's board. Ethan was nervous beyond words. He had never spoken to such an influential group before. "You'll do fine," Victoria reassured him. "Just be yourself and focus on the facts." He spent nights preparing, practicing in front of a mirror, and jotting down notes. When the day came, he stepped into the boardroom, heart pounding. The room was full of senior executives, some of whom had hundreds of employees under them. Ethan took a deep breath and began presenting, speaking clearly and confidently. To his surprise, the executives listened attentively, asking questions that he could answer with preparation and honesty. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Victoria gave him a proud smile from across the room. Ethan realized he had earned their respect not because of luck, but because of hard work and persistence. Returning home that evening, he found Lily waiting eagerly. "How was it, Daddy?" she asked. He hugged her tightly. "It went really well, kiddo," he said. "Everyone listened, and they liked what I had to say. I knew you could do it." She exclaimed. Her excitement reminded him of why he had fought so hard for this opportunity. As the weeks went on, Ethan's confidence grew. He began to see a future where he could provide Lily with a comfortable life, be present in her world, and continue growing professionally. Each day brought challenges, but also achievements that strengthened his belief in himself. Even Mr. Collins, who had once doubted him, couldn't ignore his progress. One evening, Ethan visited the restaurant to pick up some items. Collins muttered, "I guess you're doing okay for yourself." Ethan smiled politely, not needing validation. He had proven his worth to himself, and that was enough. Life had become a balance of work, learning, and parenting. Ethan was no longer just a waiter struggling to make ends meet. He was a trainee, a mentor, a leader in the making. And most importantly, he was a father who could finally give his daughter the time, attention, and love she deserved. Sitting on the balcony that night, watching the city lights twinkle, Ethan felt a deep sense of gratitude. Every challenge, every mistake, and every moment of doubt had led him to this point. Victoria's belief in him, Lily's unwavering support, and his own determination had created something extraordinary, a life full of possibility, hope, and purpose. For the first time in years, Ethan felt truly alive. He knew there were still challenges ahead, but he was ready. He had grown stronger, wiser, and more confident than ever. And with Lily by his side, he felt that no obstacle was too great. The spilled wine that had once filled him with shame had led him to this remarkable turning point. And he vowed to make the most of every opportunity from now on. The day of the big event arrived, and Ethan could feel his nerves buzzing like electricity through his body. For months, he had been training, learning, and proving himself. But this was different. Today, he would stand in front of a large audience of executives, staff, and even Victoria Hale herself. The thought both excited and terrified him. He remembered the spilled wine, the embarrassment and the doubt, and yet somehow, those moments had led him here. He woke up early that morning, kissed Lily goodbye, and promised he would call her after everything was done. "I'll be proud of you, Daddy," she said with a grin. Her words gave him strength. He dressed carefully, choosing a suit that fit a little better than it had months ago. Standing in front of the mirror, he straightened his tie, took a deep breath, and whispered to himself, "You can do this." Arriving at the venue, Ethan saw a crowd gathered in a spacious hall. The room shimmered with soft lighting, and a stage was set with a podium and large screens. His heart raced as he realized how many people would hear his story. Behind the scenes, other presenters were preparing, checking notes, and adjusting microphones. Ethan found a quiet corner running through his speech in his head. He focused on the journey that had brought him here, the long nights, the exhausted mornings, the moments of doubt, and the unwavering hope that kept him moving forward. Victoria arrived shortly afterward, greeting him with her calm, encouraging smile. "You're ready," she said softly. "Remember, speak from your heart. That's all people want to hear." Her words reminded him of why he had worked so hard, not for applause, not for recognition, but for the chance to show that perseverance and character mattered. When his name was called, Ethan felt a jolt of fear, but stepped forward anyway. The applause was polite but formal, and he could feel the weight of the room pressing on him. Taking a deep breath, he adjusted the microphone and began. He started with the simple truth of his life, being a single dad. Working long hours as a waiter, struggling to make ends meet, and always worrying if he could give Lily the life she deserved. He spoke about the spilled wine, the embarrassment he had felt, and the moment Victoria Hale chose kindness over anger. The room listened quietly, some faces showing surprise, others curiosity, and a few nodding as they connected with his story. Ethan described how Victoria's unexpected kindness had opened a door he never thought would exist. He explained the training program, the challenges he faced learning new skills, and the doubts he had to overcome. He shared the long hours, the mistakes, and the moments when he felt he wasn't good enough. But he also spoke about the victories, the small successes that built confidence, the relationships he had formed with coworkers, and the pride he felt in being a better father to Lily. As he spoke, Ethan noticed Victoria watching him closely. Her calm, supportive gaze made him feel less alone. He realized she had seen something in him that he had sometimes forgotten about himself: strength, resilience, and honesty. He took a deep breath and continued, recounting the moment he began to truly believe in his abilities. "It wasn't about luck," he said firmly. "It was about learning, trying, and never giving up, even when everything seemed impossible." The room was silent for a moment after he said that, the weight of his words settling on everyone present. Then came the questions. Executives and staff asked about challenges he faced, how he motivated others, and what lessons he had learned. Ethan answered each one honestly, speaking from experience rather than trying to impress. Each answer felt like a small victory, reinforcing that he belonged here, not because of an accident or chance, because of his hard work and character. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Ethan felt a rush of emotions: relief, pride, gratitude, and even a little disbelief. People he had once thought were untouchable had listened to his story, respected his journey, and applauded his growth. He looked over at Victoria, who was clapping proudly. Her eyes shone with approval and encouragement. After the event, Victoria pulled him aside. "You were amazing," she said, her smile warm. "You spoke with honesty, courage, and heart. That's what I wanted to see." Your story will inspire others in this program and beyond." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. "Thank you, ma'am," he whispered. "I couldn't have done this without you." Victoria shook her head gently. "You could have done it on your own. I just gave you a chance. You took it and made the most of it. Remember, that's a lesson for all of us." Later that evening, Ethan returned home, tired but exhilarated. Lily ran to him, jumping into his arms. "Daddy, did everyone clap for you?" she asked excitedly. "They did, kiddo," he said, laughing and hugging her tightly. "And I told them how important you are to me. Everything I do is for you." She smiled and hugged him back. "I'm proud of you, Daddy," she whispered, sitting together on the small balcony. They watched the city lights twinkle in the distance. Ethan reflected on how far he had come from the stressful days as a single waiter, the spilled wine that had seemed like a disaster. 2. Standing in front of an audience and sharing his story with confidence. Each step had been difficult, but each step had been worth it. He thought about Victoria, who had believed in him when no one else did, and about himself, who had refused to give up even when everything seemed impossible. And he thought about Lily, whose faith in him gave him strength every single day, for the first time in years. Ethan felt truly proud of himself, not for what he had achieved in the eyes of others, but for the journey he had taken and the person he had become. Life had tested him in countless ways, but those challenges had forged resilience, courage, and determination. He realized that the spilled wine, the embarrassment, and the long nights were not failures. They were the beginning of a new chapter. Ethan knew there would still be challenges ahead. Life rarely gave easy paths, and there would always be responsibilities, setbacks, and tough decisions. But now, he had proof that hard work, perseverance, and character could lead to real change. He had seen it in his own life. That night, as Lily drifted to sleep beside him, Ethan sat quietly, letting the silence of the apartment wash over him. The city lights outside shimmered like stars, and he felt a deep sense of gratitude. For the first time, he didn't feel trapped by circumstances or fear. He felt free. Free to grow, free to succeed, free to give his daughter the life he had always dreamed of. He whispered softly, more to himself than anyone else, "We made it. Lily, we really made it." In that quiet, calm moment, Ethan knew that the spilled wine that once felt like a catastrophe had been the first step toward everything he had ever hoped for. It had led him to kindness, opportunity, and a new life he never thought possible. The story that had started with embarrassment had ended with triumph, not just for him, but for Lily, and for the hope that even the smallest chance could change everything. From that day forward, Ethan embraced each challenge with confidence, gratitude, and determination. He had learned that life's unexpected moments often held the key to the greatest opportunities. And with Lily by his side and Victoria's guidance as a reminder of what belief and kindness could achieve, he was ready for whatever the future might bring. He knew one thing for sure. He would never forget that night when a spilled glass of wine had changed his life forever. And as he held Lily close, he smiled, finally understanding that sometimes the smallest accidents could lead to the most extraordinary beginnings.